Mora had been warned. Not in words, but in glances. The kind of looks you catch when the room quiets just a second too long. When the Zelluri researchers in their glass-visored suits stared at humans the same way humans stared at test tubes. But Kale needed proof. The Lunar Outpost mission was supposed to be cooperative, a shared initiative to study rare moss strains capable of surviving deep space radiation. The Zelluri supplied the equipment, and humans brought the curiosity. On paper, it was science. Reality, Kale now realized, had teeth. He woke to cold metal beneath him and restraints biting into his wrists and ankles. A faint blue glow pulsed through the sterile chamber, humming with faint energy. His throat was dry. His head, numb. The scent of antiseptic was thick, mixed with something metallic, almost sweet. Then the voice came. Crisp. Calculated. Subject 12A is conscious. Kale blinked hard. Above him, a tall figure stood at the observation glass. Insectal eyes reflected the overhead lights. It was Six Ver, the lead xenoneurologist of the project, and now clearly the warden of this hell. Welcome back, human, Six said in that flat, emotionless timbre. You have been selected for a resilience mapping sequence. Congratulations. Most subjects expire before full assessment. Kale coughed, lips curling into a dry smirk. You always greet your guests tied down and sedated? Only those whose species claim to endure anything. We intend to verify. A soft hiss, and a wall panel opened. A mechanical arm extended, ending in a slender needle, humming faintly. Kale's body tensed. Pain level, baseline, the intercom announced. Initiating thermic nerve mapping. The needle touched skin, and heat lanced through his forearm like fire racing through steel wire. Not enough to make him scream, but enough to force his jaw shut. Sweat pooled beneath his neck. Response within expected variance, Six noted. Increased to phase 2. Kale gritted his teeth. I'm not here for your amusement. No. You're here to teach. Kale's pulse surged. Not from fear, he was past that, but fury. Fury that his team likely thought he was dead. Fury that this wasn't the first time these aliens had done this. And fury that they thought he'd break like a twig in a furnace. The next test came faster. A gravitational spike pulled his limbs downward like anchors were tied to each joint. His vision dimmed at the edges. Bones creaked under pressure. He clenched his fists, mind racing. If this was science to them, he would become the anomaly. Hours passed, maybe more. In that chamber, time didn't tick. It pulsed. The restraints retracted briefly. Kale collapsed onto the grated floor, breath coming in sharp, shallow waves. A soft shuffle of feet approached. Not heavy like Six. Lighter. Hesitant. A different Zelluri entered, smaller, barely adult. No armor. No rank. Just pale blue skin and hands that trembled slightly as they knelt beside him. She placed a vial near his lips. Drink, she whispered. Water. Kale stared at her. You part of the crew or the cleanup? I'm an intern. Vrale. Her gaze darted toward the ceiling cam. They don't know I'm in here. He sipped the water. It was warm. Barely enough. They do this to others? Vrale hesitated. 17 humans. 12 dead. You're the first to last beyond cycle 3. Kale exhaled slowly. Figures. Vrale reached into a side pouch and handed him something small, circular and translucent. It's a recorder. You'll need proof. You planning to help me escape? No, she said, backing away. But maybe, survive. And then she was gone. Six returned an hour later, accompanied by 3 assistants. They wheeled in a tall cylindrical pod, its sides coated in chrome, wires coiled like serpents. A large dome open on the top. The limit box, Six said, almost reverently. A full sensory override simulation. It adapts to each mind. We will find your boundary now. Kale didn't respond. He was already planning. They lifted him into the chamber. Soft gel filled the bottom. Electrodes attached to his scalp, spine, and temples. The pod sealed with a hiss. Darkness. Then, a battlefield. Fire. Screams. His childhood street, but warped. Buildings collapsing. People he knew, his sister, his mentor, crying out. The illusion hit like a truck, not because it looked real, but because it felt real. But Kale had trained for this. Years in survival units. War games. Virtual nerve deprivation missions. He focused his breath. Inhaled. Exhaled. Then he heard it, faint whirring behind the illusion. The machine has a core. His mind pushed. Hard. Past the noise. Past the images. He hacked the illusion using his military neurodiscipline training, finding the seams in the fake world and tearing them apart. Suddenly, the pain stopped. The battlefield disappeared. And he opened his eyes, still in the pod. But the display was red. Override detected. Sequence inverted. Kale smiled. The game had begun. Kale opened his eyes. The pod's hatch creaked open with a metallic gasp, steam curling out like breath from a beast's mouth. He lay motionless, watching. No alarms. No security response. Just red lights blinking in quiet panic. Override successful. But temporary. He slid out, landing softly on his feet. His limbs ached, but adrenaline muted the pain. He tore off the electrodes from his neck and temples. A sharp sting, then freedom. The lab beyond the pod was dark, bathed in emergency light. Screens flickered. One still looped a thermal map of his vitals, frozen mid-spike. Subject has exceeded threshold, the monitor whispered. Kale smirked. You damn right I did. He moved fast, recalling the lab's layout from brief glances during testing. Past the observation corridor. Past the specimen lockers, he didn't dare think of what, or who, they held. He needed access to the core systems. He spotted a data terminal. No physical locks. Alien tech worked through biometric pulses. But Kale had an advantage, Vrali's recorder. He clipped the small device to the terminal's input node. It sparked. Then bloomed open. Rows of files, neural maps, video logs, experiment archives, flooded the display. He scanned quickly, fingers swiping through the grotesque catalog. Phase 1, nerve mapping. Phase 2, cortical stress. Phase 3, simulated mental collapse. Subjects, human. 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 17 names. 17 final entries. Kale's teeth clenched. No more. He downloaded everything onto the recorder's secondary buffer. The next step was riskier, manual override of the neural grid. He needed to reverse the limit box. Make them feel it. All of it. Footsteps. Kale slipped behind the console as two Zelluri entered, muttering in clicks and translated hums. System unstable. Box malfunctioned. Subject output inconsistent. Shall we alert 6? He's reviewing the raw feedback. Subject's brain activity breached the upper boundary. Kale tensed. Good. Let him stew in that. The two passed, unaware. He moved out, ducking into a side corridor where the medical assistants prepped equipment. Empty for now. But something caught his eye, Vrali. She stood near a supply rack, face pale, antennae twitching in anxiety. When she saw him, her eyes widened. How? Limit box glitched, Kale said flatly. I glitched it back. She blinked. You hacked a bioneural simulation? No. I outlasted it. Then I bent it. Vrali looked around, then pulled him behind a stack of storage canisters. You can't stay here. They'll find you. They will, Kale said, holding up the recorder, after they feel what we felt. He told her the plan. Rewire the system. Insert 6S biometric signature. Trigger a feedback loop. Turn the limit box into a mirror. Vrali hesitated. He's the director. His imprint is locked behind 3-tier encryption. And you have access to tier 2. Her silence said enough. I'm not asking you to die with me, Kale added. Just help me make sure no more of us die after me. She nodded once, reluctantly. Follow me. They moved through a service tunnel, small and damp with coolant mist. Vrali guided him into the auxiliary control room, and used, unmonitored, isolated. This station was for system diagnostics, she whispered. They abandoned it when the remote links went active. Kale tapped the interface, navigating toward the neural matrix. Vrali overrode 2 encryption layers, hands shaking. The third, 6S genetic key, was trickier. Kale inserted the recorder again. 6 scan me during intake. There's a trace signature embedded in the pre-test scan. That enough to spoof it? Vrali stared, surprised. If the sequence syncs, maybe. The system pulsed red. Warning, unauthorized subject signature detected. Then green. Access granted, director override mode. Kale exhaled. Showtime. He fed 6S neural profile into the simulator, but not just as an operator. As a subject. The limit box, already primed, would interpret the data as its next target. He adjusted the pain parameters, exact matches to the files from phases 1 through 3. He included everything. The burns. The pressure. The illusions of failure, abandonment, helplessness. All mapped from human minds. All optimized for terror. Vrali paled. He won't survive this. He's not supposed to. But if he does, maybe he'll learn something. Kale re-entered the lab through the vent above the main chamber. Below, 6 stood near the limit box, adjusting settings. Subject 12's behavior is anomalous, he muttered to his console. Unacceptable. Pattern deviation suggests. Kale dropped down behind him, fast and silent. 6 spun, startled. Impossible. Kale grabbed him by the shoulder, slamming him against the console. Tag. You're it. He pressed the terminal key. The pod opened. Kale forced 6 inside before he could shout. Straps locked. Needles inserted. The machine hummed. 6 screamed. But no one came. The door was locked. Kale made sure of it. On screen, the simulation began. For the first time, the Zelluri scientist experienced pain not through observation, but embodiment. He was dropped into a sensory hell. A collapsing station. Burning winds. Screaming voices in languages he didn't understand. His exoskin ruptured under imaginary pressure. Every moment designed from data pulled off human agony. Kale and Vrali watched. 6's body convulsed. His mandibles snapped against the restraints. You're watching a summary of your own thesis, Kale said flatly. Vrali turned away. I didn't think it would be this. Real? Kale finished. Yeah. That's what they said, too. After 3 minutes, the pod shut down. 6 lay still. Not dead, but broken. Kale walked over. Looked into those glassy, pride-shattered eyes. Now you know. And you'll tell them. Every species. Every outpost. 6 twitched, but didn't respond. Next time, ask for volunteers. Kale turned to Vrali. Get me to a comms relay. To send the data? No. To show them everything. Kale stood in front of the relay console, fingers dancing over alien symbols that now felt almost familiar. Vrali hovered behind him, silent but tense. Every second they lingered on the Zelluri research vessel risked exposure. But escape wasn't enough. Everyone needed to see this. He loaded the recorder into the uplink port. The data flooded the screen: names, dates, biological readings, footage of screams behind glass, bodies discarded like lab waste. "Send it," Vrali whispered. Kale didn't look away. "Not just send. Broadcast." "To whom?" "Everyone with a receiver," he said. "Galactic Union. Civilian channels. Military networks. They need to understand exactly what research means on this ship." He tapped one final command. The signal flared. Dozens of systems lit up as the files dispersed across secure and public spectrums. The alien encryption folded under the weight of his override, thanks to Vrali's earlier access. The footage of T6 screaming inside the limit box was last. No commentary. No context. Just a high-ranking Zelyuri stripped of his intellect and turned into a number, like every human before him. Within minutes, alarms rang across the ship. They knew. Kale turned to Vrali. "Go. Now. Before they trace it back. They'll find me," she said. "They'll know I helped. You saved a life. They won't forget that." "Neither will yours," she replied, voice soft. He offered a small nod, then slipped into the escape corridor. Kale's stolen route took him past the lower cargo bay, where detained subjects, some conscious, most not, were stored. He stopped. A choice presented itself. Leave alone. Or take them home. He opened the chamber. Inside, 3 humans stirred. One had an oxygen mask. Another blinked weakly. A third, young, scarred, stared in disbelief. "You're not one of them," she croaked. "No," Kale said. "I'm worse. I came back." He lifted her up. She was light. Far too light. "Can you run?" "If you carry the rest," she whispered. Kale activated a stolen emergency beacon, standard protocol for any unauthorized launch. He dragged the others into an auxiliary pod, the kind used for rapid evacuation during lab failures. As he prepped the thrusters, the young woman beside him asked, "What happens now?" Kale paused. "Now we show them what humans do when tested." "Which is?" "We return the favor." As the pod blasted away from the ship, Kale watched Kshatzur shrink into the void. No pursuit. Not yet. The broadcast had sparked confusion. Protocols were likely clashing. Bureaucracy would buy him time. He exhaled. For the first time in days, it was clean air. Hours later, the pod entered Earth's lunar perimeter. The message had already made its rounds. Union satellites replayed the footage on loop. Public reaction across the systems varied: horror, outrage, embarrassment. But most importantly, acknowledgement. Kale's pod landed at a secure Earth outpost. He exited with 2 survivors in his arms and 1 limping beside him. They were met not with weapons, but stretchers and med teams. A UN envoy stepped forward. "Dr. Kale Mora?" "That's me," he said. "Guess I missed a few memos." "You didn't miss anything. You wrote the new ones." Days passed. Then weeks. Sixfer was stripped of rank and labeled unstable. A convenient scapegoat. The Zelyuri issued a formal apology, calling it a rogue program. But it didn't matter. The footage was permanent now. Untouchable. Human representatives demanded a tribunal. The Galactic Union stalled. Until Kale arrived, invited, as a witness. He stood before a hall of delegates from 50 species, lights above casting long shadows over curved benches. The footage was paused behind him, screen frozen on 6's contorted face. "Do you know what made humans scream?" Kale asked the silent chamber. No one answered. It wasn't the needles. Not the simulations. Not the pressure or heat. It was being treated like we didn't matter. Like we were variables. He let that sit. We're a flawed species. But we feel pain because we have something to lose. You wanted to understand human endurance? Congratulations. Now you know. A hush fell. Then a vote was called. A new intergalactic ethics charter passed, barely. But it passed. Forced experimentation was outlawed. Violators would face immediate sanction. And humans were no longer viewed as test subjects. They were peers. Back on Earth, Kale visited the recovery wing where the survivors rested. The young woman, name Samira, age 26, was already walking short laps. She smiled when he entered. "We're not rats anymore," she said. "No," Kale replied. "We're the ones holding the clipboard now." She laughed softly. "You think they'll remember this?" Kale stared out the window toward the stars. "Only if we make sure they never forget." In the silence that followed, his personal console blinked. A message. From Vrali. Just 2 words. "They're watching." Kale smiled grimly. Let them. Because now, humans were watching back. 6 months later, Kale stood in orbit again, only this time, not as a prisoner. He wore a charcoal gray jacket marked with the emblem of Earth's newly established Interstellar Ethics Commission. He hadn't asked for the role. He didn't even want it. But when you're the man who reversed the most sadistic experiment in galactic history, people expect you to walk into the fire again. This time, the fire was colder. The Union had sanctioned another Zelluri research ship. Officially, a rehabilitation center. Unofficially, a rebranding exercise. The science didn't stop. It just changed names. And Kale was here to see if it had changed its soul. The ship's designation was Torvanis, sleek and angular. No torture rooms. No restraint pods. Just white corridors, neural interfaces, and data labs. On the surface, it was clean. But Kale knew better than to trust polished floors. A Zelluri greeted him at the docking bridge. Not 6, of course. That scientist was still locked in psychological observation, trembling through fabricated memories of his own machine. The alien in front of him, though, was younger. Polished. Smiling, even if such a thing could be said of a creature without lips. "Dr. Mora," it said. "A pleasure. I'm Lee Ken. I'll be your liaison." "I'm not here for pleasure," Kale replied. "Just transparency." "Of course. The commission demands full access." "You'll have it." Kale followed, boots clicking quietly behind Lee Ken's soft pads. They passed through research wings, observation decks, and acclimatization chambers where volunteers, this time, underwent simulations and rehabilitation training. So far, everything appeared ethical. That unsettled him more than anything. In the third wing, Kale paused beside a med bay. Inside, a human woman floated in a zero-grav tank, eyes closed, electrodes gently pulsing at her temples. A heartbeat monitor blinked calmly. Kale turned to Lee Ken. "What's her program?" "Neural recalibration. She's a war refugee with trauma blockades. We simulate recovery conditions, calm environments, stable stimuli. No stressors. No triggers." She agreed to this. "Signed, recorded, witnessed by 3 species observers," Lee Ken said. "We learned." Kale narrowed his eyes. "Or you're just hiding it better." Lee Ken paused. "Would you believe we regret what was done? Regret doesn't unburn skin. Or revive the 17 dead." Lee Ken said nothing more. Later that night, Kale requested access to the off-grid archives, logs not connected to the primary network. Lee Ken hesitated. That alone was enough reason to push harder. Inside the archive chamber, Kale found a wall of neural disks. Each bore the label of a subject, now inactive. Most were volunteers. A few were not. He loaded a disk marked X09 into the console. Static at first. Then, 6. Younger. Confident. Smiling as he recorded his notes. Today's subject resisted phase 3, the log played. Fascinating. A scream only after 7.2 minutes. That's a record. Cale watched in silence. The next clip showed the same human subject, post-session. Face slack. Eyes vacant. Discharged for disposal, the file concluded. Cale leaned back. They archived the entire genocide and filed it as procedure. He pulled the disk, inserted a blank one, and began copying. Not for revenge. For preservation. On his way back to his quarters, Cale passed a room he hadn't seen before, dim, sealed, and without registry in the map. He keyed his access. Inside, a single Zelluri sat surrounded by soundproof glass, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Cale approached. The eyes opened. It was 6. Older now. Broken. But alive. They keep you here? Cale asked through the comm panel. 6 blinked. They say I'm a reminder. A museum piece. A consequence. Do you understand what you did? I understood pain. I never understood humanity, 6 whispered. Now I do. You feel because you choose to. Even when it hurts. Cale didn't reply. He just stared. Would you end me? 6 asked. No. That would erase the lesson. He left the room without looking back. The next day, Cale joined a panel of ethics reviewers. A dozen representatives, each from a different world, sat in a ring overlooking the central chamber. On the table before them lay Cale's findings, copies of the logs, testimonies, and neural maps. We are not here to punish, said the facilitator. We are here to ensure no species forgets what happened. Dr. Mora, your conclusion? Cale stood. Science isn't evil. Curiosity isn't evil. But using pain as currency to purchase knowledge is. He held up the disk of 6S logs. We came to understand what makes humans different. I'll tell you, we remember. We learn from pain. And when someone tries to use it against us, we don't just survive. We rewrite the rules. No one spoke for several seconds. Then the vote passed again, this time, unanimously. The revised ethics charter would not just prohibit experimentation on sentience. It would enforce restitution. The victims would be named. Their families compensated. Their stories taught. Pain would no longer be hidden behind progress. As Cale prepared to leave Torvani's, Vrali contacted him again. This time, her voice. You still don't trust them, do you? Trust isn't the point, Cale said. Accountability is. You could disappear. Let the next generation handle it. Or I could stay. So they never forget who made them rewrite their code. She laughed gently. Still the troublemaker. Still human. Cale stepped aboard his shuttle and looked out one last time. The stars blinked. Cold. Silent. But they weren't watching him anymore. They were watching us. And for the first time in history, they were nervous.